Well, I hate to tell you this, but many chord charts lie, or they dumb down the chord progression so that they're more accessible to beginners or musicians with limited music theory. In my opinion, a perfect example of this is the song King of My Heart, which I'm going to break down for you today. This is a great song. It's a simple song, so I'm not really sure why the chord chart has to be so questionable that they've got to simplify it, but I have some thoughts on why, and I'll share that with you later. But there's a lot of versions of this song out there, and typically the song's done in A flat, and that seems to be the most common key for it that I hear. Our worship team is doing this song right now in the key of G. I'm going to play it in the key of A for this video for reasons because. And I'm going to show you, though, how to borrow chord voicings also from other arrangements of the song in order to spur new ideas for it. But I'm going to start off just kind of saying, okay, how is it typically played and what is really the main voicing for the song? And that can really be used in kind of as a basis for any arrangement that you do. And even though I have it here on my notes here, starting with the verse, I'm gonna bypass that. I'm gonna start with the chorus, and because that's really the main part of the song and really where the chord progression on the chord chart really kind of gets it wrong. And so on my chord chart that I get from my worship team for the key of A, I won't tell you the source, but if you're using Planning Center and you've got tied in with the different services that are out there that provide chord charts, then you'll probably know one of the ones that I'm talking about. But the chord chart that I have for the chorus, it reads as F sharp minor to E to D and then to A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, that's what the chord chart says. I'm going to play that and see how it sounds. So, and I'm all going to play it in root position as if I'm a new keyboard player here, just playing it directly as it says, and then we'll start shuffling around and figuring out what we're really supposed to play here. So here we go, the F sharp minor. So that's what the chord chart's telling you, and really that's pretty much accurate to the song. I mean, you can hear that and go, you could sing along to it. And I'm not a singer, so forgive me for this. You are good, good, oh, you are good. So yeah, it works. But the chord progression is, it's kind of been simplified from the way it really is in the recording. So you could say, well, is it because we're doing it all in root positions, maybe we should move it around in some inversions or whatever? You could, but really that's missing out on what the song's really doing here. Actually, and if you watch the first episode I did on Deciphering Chord Charts, you notice that I talked a lot about sus chords. And so we're going to look at the same thing here with this song and use sus chords. And the one sus chord I'm going to use, I'm going to alternate between an A major and an A sus4. So I'm in the key of A again. If you're whatever other key that you're playing it in, just move that chord to whatever key. So if you're in the key of G, you just move to a G major, G sus4. In this case, we're in the key A sus4. Okay, so those are going to be our two chords for the entire chorus. You're probably wondering, well, how does that happen? Well, because the bass guitar is going to determine the actual movement of the song, the harmony. And so here's how I would interpret that chorus chord progression. So what you have then is you've got this, you could call that you can call that an F sharp minor 7, but since I'm playing the F down here in the bass, or the bass player is playing it down there, I don't need to play it here, so I still have that A chord right here, then add the bass. Now that suddenly turns that A major chord into an F sharp minor 7. pretty cool. Now, then I keep that A major. I just changed the bass. Kind of a cool chord there. It's really just now the bass is playing the 5th of the A chord. Then, when the bass goes to the D, that's when I do that A sus4 chord, because now that's highlighting the sus4 in the A. And then right back to A. So, you are good. Again, I'm not a singer. Good. So, that's how I would interpret that particular chord chart. So as you'll notice, I've talked about in my last video I talked about common tones. So obviously this song has common tones all throughout it, which is the A and the E right here. Those are the common tones that are throughout the chorus. The only thing that changes is that note. And that's it. So that's a pretty easy keyboard part, but it really fits more of the actual recording itself, or all the different versions that are out there are kind of based off of that structure of the song. So that's kind of hard for a lot of people to kind of wrap their brains around, where this chord's staying the same, and it's the bass movement that's actually making the song feel like it's moving. Now this is the typical recording with a full band playing, so you have this. So it's a simple part, but with that full band it sounds really powerful. Now I want to point out another version of this song, a guy named Dan Musselman, who I enjoy listening to because he does piano versions of worship songs, and it's just solo piano. There's no singing, it's just instrumental. So he'll do a lot more than just that. I mean, if he was doing a piano record or just playing this, nobody's going to buy his record or listen to him on Spotify. So in this case, he can do more with his voicings, more with the part, and really kind of add more to it. So he will do something like this. Hold on, how's it go? Just 2 bars of the song I'm playing there just to represent the first approach he takes to the chorus. So as you can see, there's a lot more happening there. It's still all based around the same chord structure, but it's a busier part. So you could break that down and say, okay, well, let's look at that, because all the individual notes can kind of highlight what the actual chords are. So let's take a look at that. That would be one chord. You could have this as the next chord. Interesting. Or you could just keep it simpler. Then you have this chord, and you have this chord. So, or you can even simplify it more and just you could do it this way. Interesting. So that's a whole different way to voice the chords, but it's still based off this whole. How so? Well, because the first one, you're dealing with this octave here. The left hand's doing this arpeggio, but it's outlining the F minor 7 that I pointed out. There's the F sharp minor 7. There's the F sharp. There's the 5th of the F sharp minor 7. Here's the 3rd of the F sharp minor 7. So the only thing you're missing is this. You could throw it in, and there it is. But it's enough. You could say it's the F sharp minor. Anyway, the 7 is implied there. Then you've got this chord, which is, and so this you could leave this out or not, but you you're back to that A. So you've got all the notes that are highlighting an A major. That's a major 7. Again, you could leave it out, and it's still you're highlighting the A major chord. And you've got this chord here, and there's that C, which is the, oops, my bad. I said C. Why did I say C? D. I'm sorry. Which is the 4 in the A sus4. So let me play that again for you. And then you've got this A here. You've got an extra note here, which is, you can throw it out here and just, again, you're kind of implying that A sus4, then you're back to. So again, it's the main harmony of the song. And then you can take that and just voice it in different ways that give it an interesting sound. So, but in this case, I wanted to point that out because normally, if you're playing on a worship team, you're playing with a full band. You don't want to play a lot and conflict with other instruments. So yeah, you could borrow from, and again, it's Dan Musselman. I highly recommend you listening to his stuff. He has some really nice piano parts. But you could borrow some ideas from there, but it's always a thing where you play it in context with your band and find out, well, does this really actually work or not? Or is it just too busy? And if it's too busy and it doesn't work, then just leave it out. But you could play around and steal some of these ideas from other arrangements and find out different ways to voice these chords, which still works for the song, and just kind of get creative there. All right, so that is the chorus of the song. We can go back to the verse. But first, actually, let's go to the bridge, because this is where there's a lot of confusion on the song. The chord chart that I get, again, from my worship team is very confusing. It has this, it has an A chord, and then, so, you're never gonna let me down. And then it changes to, you're never gonna let me down. Then it goes back to the A. And that just does not sound good at all to me. And when I listen to any of the versions that I'm familiar with, none of them seem to do that. So I'm going to show you, basically just take whatever the bridge says on the chord chart there, and we're just going to throw it away. There's 2 bridges to the song. And so the first one, when you go to the bridge, you just kind of sit on that. You're never gonna. There we go. So it's just sitting on that A. And what I would do here, if I'm the keyboard player, because you could play just the low A there with the bass player, but I try to encourage keyboard players not to play the bass notes if they've got a bass player. Instead, I would voice the song more up here. While the bass player is doing that low A. Then you probably got the guitar player that's probably chunking along on an A note or like maybe an A power chord or something, but he's pretty much highlighting that A note. Then you've got your melodies, your vocals, I should say. Whether it's more of a tenor or a soprano singing it, are going to be more in this range of the keyboard. So that's why I would move the piano up here so that you're out of the way of the vocals that are more in this range, the bass that's more down in this range, the guitars are somewhere around here, and it kind of spreads out the song. And also because this, when you play this up in the higher registers, even if you're playing at the same volume, because that part of the song dynamically it feels like it quiets out. And so that sounds a lot more dynamically, it feels like it drops down in dynamics just because you've moved way up in an octave there. And then, like I said, it gives you room for the other instruments, for the singers, so that everybody's not stepping on each other's toes. So that's what I would do here. Now, even though I'd be playing up here, I'm going to play the bass note just so that you can hear how the first bridge actually works. So it stays on the A, as you can see. I'll play it down here just so we can hear it a little better. So basically, it's just kind of like a pickup. You're staying on the A until the bass guitar decides, okay, now's the time to move to that second part of the bridge. And now you're on the second part of the bridge, which is now... And then you keep play that for as long as your worship team plays it until you go back into the chorus. The second time when you go into the bridge, you just go directly into that. All right. You do that. So that's the bridge. What's on the chord chart can be a little bit confusing, so that's actually how it is on most of the recordings. I know there's some different versions that do it a little bit differently, but that's basically the meat and potatoes how that bridge works. All right, so let's go back to the verse. The verse is, you know, I'm okay with how they have the chord progression here. It's basically, you know, so you've got the and you got so basically just the way it's written is okay. It works. You could still utilize the sus chords like you do on the chorus. Let the king of my heart. So you could do it with sus chords too, but really I don't think the verse is as important to play it with those sus chords. You can, but the way it's written there is okay. Just kind of play with it and see what works best for your worship team. Now, the reason why I think that the song, why the song has been dumbed down, and the way I say it, is by the people who wrote this chord chart is, number one, it could just be that they're trying to keep it less confusing looking for the person reading the chart. Maybe all those sus chords and slashes might be a little confusing, or maybe they're just wanting it to sound good when you play it by yourself, because I think a lot of musicians get confused when they're at home and they're going, okay, I got to practice my part, and if it doesn't sound like the song, then they kind of get confused. It's almost like where if you've ever played in band in school, and maybe you play trumpet or trombone or something like that, where you just play a single note, and you're reading your music at home, and you're like do 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 do, and you're just playing your little part, and you're like, well, this doesn't sound like the song, until you get into the band class with all the other instruments, and then you play and you're like, oh, okay, now I hear how everything works together here, and how my little part suddenly now is helping to form this song. I'm just a gear in the wheel, or a gear in the a cog in the wheel, or whatever the expression is I'm trying to think of. And so the same thing here. I think what happens is, whether it's a keyboard player or guitar player, if they're reading their part and they're going, okay, like on the chorus I'm playing, they're like, what am I doing? That doesn't sound like the song. And so they get confused, where if, when you put in the bass guitar, then suddenly now it sounds more like the song, because you've got all the instruments work together in order to create the whole. You've got separate pieces and they work together to create the whole. So for somebody who just wants to like play along on the piano and be able to sing it, they want to make it so that it can sound more like it, or like, they're strumming on the guitar. They're not playing with a bass player. They don't have a left hand that they can play bass notes. So they're like, okay, well, let's just, and they go, okay, because that sounds close to the song. You are. Sorta. that one chord kind of didn't quite work. Sorta. Because the melody's just going. It's really doing the same note over and over. You are. And so without that bass note, it sounds a little weird, so. They want to be able to make it sound more like something that sounds close to the song when you play it by yourself. That's at least my thinking about as to why they probably do that. All right, so hopefully this information was helpful for you. I hope you'll subscribe to this channel, and thanks for watching. God bless.